Bienvenidos a este diálogo con Pierre Lévy, un filósofo de origen tunecino formado en Francia que actualmente es profesor en la Universidad de Ottawa. Un hombre que hace más de 20 años piensa el entorno en el que vivimos, piensa esta transformación cultural de la que somos partes, testigos, protagonistas y que nos atraviesa en tanto seres humanos. Inteligencia colectiva, nomadismo, esfera semántica, son algunos de los términos con los que Pierre Lévy nos provoca y en este diálogo vamos a intentar comprender. Hace 20 años, Pierre Lévy comprendió que estábamos atravesando una transformación cultural, una mutación que alcanzaba todos los órdenes de nuestra vida, pero esas no eran las primeras mutaciones que había sufrido la humanidad. ¿Cuáles son las mutaciones que identificaste, que sistematizaste en lo que hace a lo que llamás la manipulación de los símbolos de las personas?
Okay. The symbolic manipulation is what distinguishes the people, the human beings, from the animals. The animals are able to communicate, but they are not able to speak, to ask questions, to have a dialogue, to speak about their past, their future, and so on. We can do this because we speak. And not only are we able to speak, but also to create music, works of art, to build complex institutions like political institutions, religions, and so on. Complex law, complex relationship between people. All this cultural sphere is supported by human symbolic manipulation. So the first big mutation in the history of symbolic manipulation is the invention of writing. Because when we write, the symbols, the speech, if you want, is lasts in time by itself. It does not go away in the wind. It is written, it is there, and even if I go away or if I die, you can still read what I have written. And we can still read what the ancient Egyptians or Mesopotamian or Chinese have written. So when humanity invented writing, it transformed it's not only the personal memory of the people, but also the collective memory of the society. Because from the invention of writing, we could have libraries, we could accumulate knowledge, we could have a better knowledge of the history of the past. We can think about what we know because it's like in front of us and so on. So there was, at the time of the invention of writing, there was also other big mutation, the invention of agriculture, the invention of the state, complex religions with temples and so on. So it was the beginning of civilization, if you want. Okay. Then there was another mutation that it was not an isolated incident, but a complex process, of course. And I think the second mutation is the invention of symbolic systems that are easy to manipulate, like the alphabet, where we have only 30 signs, and only with these 30 signs that represent not ideas, but just sounds. By combining sounds, we can reproduce the speech, and then as we reproduce the speech, we can reproduce ideas. So it was a big improvement because it was easier to learn. the alphabet than the old ideographic systems. And also when we invented the Indo-Arabic numeration systems with only 10 numerals that have a different meaning with their position. For example, if it is in this position, this numeral means 2, but in the other position it means 20, and so on, 200. Okay, so it was easy to learn, and also you can perform easily operations more easily than with the Roman numerals, for example. Okay, so at this time, let's say the people who adopted these new symbolic systems were much more powerful than those who stayed with the old symbolic systems. For a good example of this is the conquest of Egypt by the Greeks who used the alphabet. And there was very powerful empires that were based on the alphabet, like the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, and so on. And also, at this time, the knowledge was much more rational and with a universal horizon, the development of philosophical ideas, trying to be true everywhere independently of particular cultural context and so on. Obviously, the next big cultural revolution was the invention of the printing press, and then the invention of photography, radio, television, and so on. So here we have mechanized the reproduction and transmission of symbols. Okay. So communication became much more easy, and in addition, the memory also improved a lot. It was easier to have libraries, for example, because you can print, you can industrialize the production of books. Okay, you have much more books. And you know, once a book has been printed, the work cannot disappear. Before this, when it was recopied by hand, you lose one copy, you lose another copy, and you lose the work itself. Okay, so with the printing press, the culture memory is preserved. So, based on the printing press and on the new communication systems, we invented a new kind of science. For example, not for example, but the most important transformation was the invention of the experimental mathematical science of nature. Because we can have very precise records with precise numbers, and we can compute the astronomical movements and deduce the laws and so on. So, it was also the moment where the industry was invented. It was the time of the Industrial Revolution. From a political point of view, it was the time of the invention of the nation state. So you can see that each time that there is a mutation in symbolic manipulation, there is also a big mutation in culture, in all aspects of culture: science, religion, politics, and so on. So I think that today, we are witnessing, let's say, the fourth of these big cultural revolutions. And this time it's not the reproduction or the diffusion of information, it is the automatic transformation of information. Once the information is coded in the binary code for the computer, they are able to perform a lot of very complex operations on the information automatically. So we live now in a communication environment where, of course, there is memory of the information, automatic transmission, ease of manipulation for the human mind, but also automatic transformation. And currently, we can say that almost all the, it's not completely done, but it's an ongoing process, and very soon the majority, if not the totality, of the human memory will be coded in 0 and 1, and will be online in cyberspace or in the infosphere, if you want, and we will be all able, we are already able to access to this global memory, to transform it, and to make a lot of operations automatically on this memory: analysis, synthesis, exploration, search, and so on. So it's a completely new situation.
Es una situación muy nueva, es apasionante y cada frase invita a una pregunta. Me preguntaba primero, cuando hace más de 20 años empezaste a pensar estos temas, pensabas en lo virtual, que hasta ese momento lo virtual era opuesto a lo real. Y vos dijiste, no es lo opuesto a lo real. ¿Qué pensás hoy que es lo virtual? ¿Y qué decían hace 20 años tus colegas cuando anticipabas que el mundo iba a ser virtual?
What my colleagues were, okay. Oh, yes, they thought that I was crazy. Because at the time, 20 years ago, when I wrote, for example, the book Collective Intelligence or What is the Virtual? And even before this, I wrote a book called The Technologies of Intelligence. This was in 90. Okay. At the time, there was less than 1% of the global population, global human population, that was connected to the internet. The internet already existed, but it was used for email or by some scientists to send information to some big computers to have the computation made at a distance and then get back the result, things like this. It was not like today with the social media, the web, and so on. So, but when I understood that there was this new connection between the telecommunication system and the automatic computers, I realized that the future communication system will be based on the interconnection of computers. Because, of course, behind the computers you have human beings, and inside the computers you have the information. So when all the computers are connected, this means that all the information are connected and all the people are connected. So I understood that this was the direction, and immediately I asked to myself, what is the best use that we can do of this new communication system that is emerging? And my answer was, the best use that we can do is to augment human cognition, human thinking abilities. How to think better together, because it's not only the individual cognition that is augmented, more memory, more reasoning, more abilities to imagine by simulations and so on, but it's also a way to work together. So my idea was to augment collective intelligence, and that's why I wrote the book called Collective Intelligence.
Pierre Lévy instaló algunos conceptos que revolucionaron el mundo de los expertos. ¿Por qué? Porque nos permitieron, o les permitieron a los expertos, comprender algunos fenómenos que estaban sucediendo e incluso que iban a suceder. Uno de ellos es el de inteligencia colectiva. Pierre Lévy trabajó mucho también como antropólogo, es filósofo, pero tiene estudios en antropología. Y entonces, Pierre, sabías que la construcción de la inteligencia siempre fue colectiva. Sin embargo, toma una relevancia muy fuerte con la llegada de la virtualidad. ¿Por qué se amplifica la inteligencia colectiva con la llegada de las tecnologías, de la comunicación y la educación? ¿Por qué o cómo?
Okay, first, there is this question of access to information. There is no limitations anymore that are related to space or time. Okay, the information is ubiquitous. You can access from anywhere and at any time to the information that you want. Also, you can communicate with all the people you want on the whole planet. If you speak the same language, of course, okay? And also you can work collaboratively to create a common memory. Everyone can add his or her little part, and we build something that is common. So we create a common wealth of knowledge from our experience, from our local context and so on, everyone in its own local context, but we can add all this in one common memory. And that's exactly what's going on the web in general, but we can also quote the example of Wikipedia, for example, where there are a lot of people that are creating together an encyclopedia. Or we can speak about the open source software movement, where a lot of programmers from all around the world are working together to create better software. In the field of education, I think that it's very good for students to have immediate access to all the information they need, and also to work together to help each other to learn. In the field of communication or journalism, when I was young, I lived in France. There was 2 TV channels owned by the state, and the information was very controlled, and it was mainly national, and we read local national newspapers. Okay. Today, I am on Twitter. I have a lot of lists. I'm interested in the news in the Middle East. I have a list Israel. I have a list Egypt. I have a list Lebanon. I have a list, Iraq and so on. And I can follow in real time everything that is happening everywhere from the sources that I decide to follow. Not something that has been done by an intermediary or that has been decided by a journalist or a particular redaction. So it's not only that I can access to everything, it's also that I can choose what I want, I can choose my sources, and I am much more aware of what's going on. So, and this is almost in every field where communication is involved. Okay, so, and what are the professional sectors now that do not use communication? So there is a general empowerment, I would say.
Ahora vamos a volver en un ratito a la educación específicamente, pero antes, pensando en los conceptos que trabajaste fuertemente, me gustaría que nos hablaras brevemente sobre el nomadismo. En una sociedad donde una de las grandes preocupaciones de la salud de la población es el sedentarismo, vos nos hablás del nomadismo. ¿Qué es y por qué somos parte? ¿Por qué somos nómades?
Okay. You don't have to take the concept literally. I mean, I use this notion of nomadism to explain that things today change very quickly. If we stick to education, for example, what we learn at school will not be true in 20 years. So you have to learn in a continuous way. It's lifelong learning. Okay, so it's not that you have your knowledge and you can sit on it like you're sedentary. Okay, you have to continue to move. You have to continue to be very aware of the environment, of what's going on. And in a way, we identify ourselves to what we know. But if we are constantly learning, because in this new environment, it's easier to create new knowledge. And new knowledge leads to new technology. New technology leads to new economic models. New economic models lead to new social problems. New social problems to new political turmoil and so on. So everything is constantly changing, and we have to get used to this self-transformation that should go with the transformation of the environment. This is what I call the new nomadism.
Hablaste hace un momento sobre la cantidad de flujo de información que existe y hablaste de educación. Los ritmos de ese flujo de información son muy distintos a los ritmos de la escuela que conocemos.
Bien sûr.
Y ahí tengo 2 o 3 preguntas. La primera es si es posible combinar unos y otros. ¿Cómo puede pensarse la escuela en este nuevo environment?
So, I don't deny that the students need to learn certain very well-defined skills, like how to count, how to read and write, things like the basic things. But once they have learned these basic things, I think the most important for them is to learn to select trusted sources of information, to filter the information, to classify and organize this information, and to analyze it, to make synthesis, to communicate this synthesis to others, to dialogue about the result of their research, and then to go back to select new sources and so on. It's a kind of cycle of analyzing, filtering, choosing in these flows of information. So for me, this is the basic new literacy, how to swim into this sea of information. You don't have to drink everything. You just have to learn how to swim. Okay.
Very interesting, the metáfora. Very, very interesting. Estamos viviendo en un mundo de profundas diferencias, con gente que accede a mucha tecnología y gente que no accede a la comida. Esta nueva esfera en la que nos estamos viendo inmersos, ¿igualará las diferencias? ¿Va a marcarlas con mayor profundidad? ¿Será más democratizadora de los pueblos? Le pregunto al filósofo.
Sí. I'm not sure, because let's say if we look, I cannot predict the future, but
You did it.
yes. But how did I did it? I did it by analyzing the past, okay, understanding the past, because every knowledge is based on experience and reasoning. Okay. So our experience shows us that the inequalities in society does not disappear when you have a new communication system. Okay? Even they augment. Okay? But in general, you have global improvement of the situation of the population, a new step in human development. Let's say, when collectively the humanity invented agriculture and writing, there was an increase of the population, okay, because there was a better general management of the food and so on. But at the same time, there was a huge social gap between the owners of the land, or the kings and so on, and the poor farmers. Or when we invented when we developed the industrialized economy, okay, there was a huge increase in population. We were able to feed more people, and people were able to live longer. But there were still inequalities between the owners of capital and the poor workers and so on. So I don't think that there will be an equalization of the situation. Nevertheless, we cannot say, I am against writing or I am against alphabetization because it does not suppress social inequities. Okay? Because at the same time, it opens new opportunities. So it's a complexification of the situation, a general improvement, and inside this general improvement, new disparities, new hierarchies. Okay? And you spoke about the access to the technology. I don't think that this is the main problem, because currently 40% of the human population is connected to the internet. 20 years ago it was less than 1%. Okay, so obviously it's not the access to technology that is the problem. I'm sure that
Is education?
Yes, it is the access to culture, the intellectual skills to help people to have the right use of all this information. This is the real point where we should make an effort.
Una última pregunta y después una invitación a un juego. La pregunta es, usted durante sus exposiciones habló sobre la religión y sobre la fe. las redes sociales muchas veces ocultan la identidad, traen nuevos problemas de transparencia, también habló. ¿Cuál es el lugar de la religión que usted anticipa en el tiempo que viene? La religión, los valores, puede ser.
Yes. I can observe something that in the time of the oral culture, the religion was shamanistic, okay, and totems, things like this. Okay. Then, at the time of the first writing systems, you have a complex polytheist religion with big temples, hierarchies of priests, complex ritual for sacrifices, and so on. New kind of religion. Okay. Then, with the alphabet, you had religions like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, that were much more abstract, with God or principles that are not easily represented, and that are in principle universal. Okay, so there has been in the past parallels between revolution in communication and religious revolutions. And the most recent, for example, at the time of the invention of the printing press, there has been the Reformation, because it's based on the fact that everybody can read the Bible. Okay? So I think that it will be the same for our current revolution, maybe not in 2 weeks, but probably an evolution in human spirituality. I cannot describe exactly how it would be, but I think that if I can express a hope, it's that people will recognize that each religious tradition or religious path is just a particular lineage, a particular tradition of human spirituality, aspiration toward transcendence. And maybe in the future, when we will be able to not only improve our collective intelligence, but observe our collective intelligence and reflect on it, we will be able to learn to improve our collective intelligence by observing it. Okay, it will be a reflexive process. And in this reflexive process, there will be a kind of aspiration towards a greater intelligence. You can call this God, you can call this a projection on the transcendence of our finite intelligence. I don't know exactly, but there will be a better consciousness of the fact that we are all on the same planet and we depend on each other. Without condemning any particular faith or any particular tradition. It's just different historical traditions, but the general aspiration towards transcendence is the same.
Le dije la última, pero tengo otra, porque me lleva a preguntarle, hace 20 años imaginó el escenario que vivimos hoy, donde máquinas se conectan con máquinas, personas se comunican a través de las máquinas con otras personas, donde la información está en una gran nube, donde hablamos de Big Data. ¿Cómo imagina el escenario de aquí a 20 años?
Okay. So, we are not very far from this, because the ability for the information in the clouds to be projected on any particular point of the planet is already there. It's just that currently it is through a smartphone or a computer or things like this. Maybe in the future it will be a holographic projection, or everything will be seen through special glasses, and we'll be able to see around each book or each person or each building a kind of ecosystem of ideas, an extract of the collective intelligence related to this thing. So that's the way I envisage a kind of mixing of the material reality and the infosphere. There will be a very close mix.
Un escenario que iremos construyendo entre todos, porque es parte de una inteligencia colectiva, con miradas como la de Pierre Lévy, que nos ayudan a imaginar, a encontrar un sentido. Nosotros los invitamos a buscar sus publicaciones, sus artículos, su blog, porque es tan interesante poder pensar el tiempo en el que vivimos, poder imaginarlo y poder comprender que somos parte de esa transformación. Pierre, muchísimas gracias. Fue un placer muy grande y es muy abstracto y sin embargo nos ha hecho una descripción comprensible, por lo menos para mí, espero que para quienes nos escuchen también. Así que muchísimas gracias por esta entrevista en Buenos Aires.
Merci beaucoup.